Oh,
Bless you.
I see Eric, Michael Gray's on the line. Eric, I hope you're feeling better.
I am, thank you.
I'm glad.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Subcommittee for our March 27th meeting of state agencies. Bree, if you have a free moment, can you please post our agenda so those watching at home can see the agencies coming before the committee today? So today we will have the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And from 10:45 to 11:30, the Military Department will be here. From 11:30 to 12 p.m., the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. From 12 p.m. to 12:30, the Department of Motor Vehicles will be here. There'll be a short break from 12:30 to 1:30. From 1:30 to 2:30, Department of Administrative Services will be here. And to close us out, it will be 2:30 to 4 p.m., the Office of Policy and Management. Just to point out, if you don't see a legislator in the room, that's because they are attending another meeting simultaneously, but they certainly are being attentive and submitting questions. And again, they will be in and out of the room. At this point, I would like to recognize our co-chair, Senator Moore, for a few opening remarks. Senator, you have the floor, ma'am.
I'd just like to say good Monday morning. Good to see you all, and I look forward to hearing from all these agencies. It should be fruitful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Next, I recognize our ranking member, Representative Piscopo, for a few remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Looking forward to a good, long, hard day here on a Monday. Thank you.
And now I'll recognize our Senate ranking member, Senator Wong. Senator, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking forward to a productive meeting, and I want to thank all the agencies for appearing before us to share their thoughts and their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I will point out that the good co-chair of the Commerce Committee, Representative Meskers, is joining us in the room today. All right, Commissioner, please introduce your staff to us, and you may begin your presentation.
Good morning, Senator Moore, Representative Napoli, and distinguished members of the General Obligation Bonding Subcommittee. I am Commissioner Nancy Navarrete of the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. I'm joined by Cheryl Aurora. She is our CFO, and Stephen Hekamovich, who is the department's Director of Engineering Services. Thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony on prior bond authorizations and the governor's proposed budget for our state fiscal year 24 and 25. The governor's budget recommends new DMIS authorizations in the amount of $48.5 million in state fiscal year 24 and $30.9 million in state fiscal year 25. We are a large healthcare service provider which delivers cost-effective quality substance use disorder and mental health treatment and recovery services. Bonding resources are used to upgrade and maintain DMIS's aging hospitals and treatment facilities. Our older facilities include the Connecticut Mental Health Center in New Haven that was built in 1966, the Capital Region Mental Health Center in Hartford's North End that was built in 1954, the Greater Bridgeport Mental Health Center built in 1972, Whiting Forensic Hospital built in 1970, and the main patient care buildings at Connecticut Valley Hospital, which date from 1940 to 1959. The governor's proposed new bond authorizations in the next biennium will provide the additional funding needed for the construction of a sprinkler project at Southwest Connecticut Mental Health System, one of our state-operated facilities in Bridgeport. Additionally, the authorizations support improvements and maintenance of physical plants of DEMIS-operated hospitals and clinics statewide, including upgrades to inpatient units, which will enhance treatment settings and living quarters, repair of replacement roofs, windows, elevators, electrical, fire alarm systems, and other life safety issues, since we do a lot of direct service. DEMIS has a total of $24.7 million in unallocated balances from previous authorizations. The department's plans for unallocated funds is as follows. Design and installation of sprinkler systems in direct care patient buildings. That's $6.9 million will go toward the Southwest Mental Health System in Bridgeport, where we have outpatient and hospital levels of care. Fire safety and environmental improvements, $12.0 million. Multiple projects, including design and fees to renovate inpatient units at Connecticut Valley Hospital's Battelle Hall, replacement of the freight elevator at Merritt Hall, a CVH inpatient services building, replacement of a generator at Dutcher Hall, a Whiting Forensic Hospital inpatient services building, design and construction of multiple roofing projects, alarm systems, replacement of HVAC units. And also a study which plans for the replacement of Whiting Forensic Hospital, where vendor procurement is currently underway to complete the study with current bids under review. Additionally, the department has $3.2 million in prior bond authorizations for grants and aid to private nonprofit providers for purchases, repairs, alterations, and improvements at community-based residential and outpatient facilities. The department anticipates utilizing this balance over the next biennium to fund infrastructure needs in the private provider system. Approximately $160,000 of this balance is authorized by the State Bond Commission as emergency funds to assist private nonprofit providers with projects that address urgent health and safety issues. We appreciate the opportunity to address the subcommittee today on these matters and would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much for your testimony. It's very informative. What is the status of the project to install new sprinklers and facilities?
I'm going to turn it over to Steve Hekamovich.
Well, right now, we are currently in a project at Connecticut Mental Health Center. We're just beginning construction on that. We're about to begin construction. We've got trailers in to be able to move people around because it's a very tight building.
And what percentage of facilities need sprinkler systems and don't have them?
Well, we have two buildings that were required by code to install sprinkler systems because they're high rises. We have until May 30, 2028 to do that. And that would be Connecticut Mental Health Center and Bridgeport. We are planning on doing it in other patient buildings also, even though they are not necessarily a code requirement, but it's for the health and safety of the patients.
Okay, great. And then as far as generators, do all your facilities have a generator, or is that something you're starting to tackle
Yes,
now?
no, they do.
Oh,
Yes.
great.
All of our patient buildings have generators. Yes.
Thank you. Senator Moore.
Good morning, Commissioner. How are you?
Good, thank you, Senator.
So I'm here in Bridgeport, and I got to tell you, I must have received a good 25 emails and phone calls from the Bridgeport building regarding the roof and the safety of it. What is the status of that?
Of the roof, Senator?
Yes,
Okay, Steve.
That's at the building at 1635 Central Ave.
correct. Or the parking garage. Is
oh,
it the
the
parking
parking-
garage?
Oh, the parking
Mhm.
garage?
Yes.
Okay, well, we're just beginning demolition of the parking garage.
Well, I don't understand. So how long has that project been going on? That we allocated, that we approved the funds for that?
Well, due to the fact that it was the onset of winter, we couldn't commence construction, and we're just starting it now.
Can you just tell me, when was the money approved for you? For the parking garage, do you know?
I'm sorry, what was that?
When was the funds approved for you for the parking garage?
I don't have that information at the top of my head, in front of me.
I just
Well,
want to let you know, I received so many complaints, and I explained to the people that we had done our part. It was now up to the organization to then move ahead and get the work done. And I just didn't understand what was taking so long. So if someone can get back
Okay,
to me and
one of
let me know why there was such a delay once we've allocated the funds to get it done, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I had to go through two bidding processes. The first one, well, first of all, the project is being run by Department of Construction Services. The first bids were over budget. We rebid it again and did some tweaking to the contract documents. And it was in the hands of Department of Construction Services to put a contract together for the contractor and get the project moving.
And Senator, the timeline for that, it should be completed in 2024.
I believe September 2024.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Piscopo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the Senate Chair touched on this. We get a lot of calls from our constituents on facilities and treatment and waiting lists. If just a quick question in general, if someone is in need of care and they have to be housed, are they housed by geography, or is it by the opening of an institution, whatever has that facility to take them in?
So if you're referring to hospital level of care, is that
Yes.
what you're referring to? So we have a statewide utilization management system. Everything goes through our medical director and his unit. So there are multiple factors primarily driven by clinical needs of the person.
I see. And your request to this bond subcommittee is for expansion of beds. Are we in need of?
There's no expansion of beds. I think you're referring to the Whiting Forensic Hospital project.
That's
So
right,
that
yes.
would mean that it's a replacement facility. Right now, the building that was built in, I think 1970 really has outlived its useful infrastructure. So anything that you can think of, elevators, HVAC, roofing, even the design of the building is outdated. So that's what we're doing now, is planning for the replacement of that building. It's not for additional beds.
I see. And we're, geez, we passed a big bill for Whiting last year, I believe, a real total capital reform for that and physical. And where are we on that? It seems like it's sitting in unallocated 2.5 million.
So we are spending down the first allocation of $500,000, working with a DAS and construction services. Right now, we have 3 vendors that are being reviewed. So we're in the last stages of choosing the vendor that will work on this design. And then we'll be able to request the rest of the dollars.
And Commissioner, in your testimony, you mentioned that you want to use the unallocated funds for future projects. Can you just give us like a line item? What you named them, you clicked them right off, and I was wondering if you could just give us a line item, because we're going to be pursuing unallocated funds.
Under fire and safety?
Okay, yes.
Under that,
You a generator, you mentioned a bunch of different stuff in your testimony.
So we can send you all of the detail. We have an attachment with 70 projects or so. We have multiple buildings across the state of Connecticut. As I read off, many of the buildings are old. So Steve, are there a few projects that you can spell out for the subcommittee?
The Dutcher generator project will be around $700,000 or $800,000. What are some of the other ones we're talking about? Sprinkler systems down at Bridgeport will be, I think, in the neighborhood of $12 million. Freight elevator for Battelle will be probably in the neighborhood of $500,000 or $600,000.
Well, I guess you answered my question. You're chewing up all the unallocateds that are,
Yes.
that you have.
Yeah, the freight elevator,
Yeah.
we'll be putting that out to bids maybe next couple of weeks.
Okay. Well,
Um,
thank you. I guess I don't need the backup information. I may in the near future,
We've-
but yeah, I
We
guess.
we have a lot of projects that are like very close to going out to bid right now.
Okay, good answer. And thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Ranking Member, Senator Wong, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, it's great to see you. Thank you for the really important work that your agency does in regards to mental health and substance abuse. It's more critical than ever. But I'm looking at this bonding request, and it seems to be mostly structural, related to fire safety and environmental. I'm curious about the centralized OPM governor's award to nonprofits. That system was centralized, I believe, from my notes, in 2013, and it hasn't been funded in the bonding allocation. It's not allocated by the governor this year either to kind of fund nonprofit programs. So what nonprofits has the department provided in capital grants in the past? And what type of projects would you consider if there was more allocated money to that kind of centralized program? We're mostly about structure, but more than ever, as you look at the need, being able to help our nonprofits that do the important work supplementing what you all do is critical. But I'm just surprised there's been no allocation. And how often and how do you communicate with the governor's office and OPM in this centralized program? And maybe for the audience, explain a little bit the centralized program, how nonprofits are being able to get grant money from your organization to address the need.
Thank you for your questions. So my understanding is that there is authorization of $25 million in each year of the biennium for the centralized nonprofit program under OPM, in addition to the current $45 million unallocated balance. So there are still dollars there. We have $3.2 million that is unallocated for our providers. What is also not included in your paperwork here is that we have been given ARPA dollars over the past 2 years. So we had $10 million in each year, and we put that out to all of our providers, and they were able to apply to us directly for money for anything that had to do with improvements that could be tied to COVID. So HVAC is a perfect example because that is important for the buildings where client care is delivered. Anything related to infection control, for example, would have been an appropriate use of those dollars. So we've been spending those dollars first. We have a good relationship with our PMPs, so they usually contact us, and then through our contracts department, we can triage those asks and loop them into OPM should it be a large ask that needs to access those funds. I hope that.
Thank you very much for that answer. But you also raise an additional concern. $10 million of ARPA money that goes off a cliff. Our agencies have been able to address the critical needs. Now I understand that, from testing and preventive care, what happens now? The ARPA money dries up, $10 million, and you got the allocation of 3.2, and you requested for each of the respective 12 24-25 year, $1 million, but it wasn't allocated by the governor. And so I'm thinking that you got needs. You requested $2 million for the next 2 years, and you had a $10 million ARPA allocation for those organizations that goes off a cliff. We're looking at significant shortfall for our nonprofits that do the important complement work to what you do. Where is that being addressed? And I'm worried that our nonprofits are just going to get crushed with this shortfall of non-ARPA money and the lack of allocation. Where do you see a solution to addressing the continuing need in those organizations that serve our public?
So we have not spent all the ARPA dollars yet. So that request has gone out twice, I believe. There was also a bill passed last year, which allows folks in the PMP world, if they have met all their contract deliverables, they're allowed to keep any surplus dollars that they have, and that can be carried across years. So that's another way that folks can pay for infrastructure needs, in addition to the 25 million plus 45 million in the centralized account.
I appreciate that, but there's been no structural strategy or plan laid out for year 5 and year 10 for those needs. Needs are not going to abate. We're depending a lot in regards to these kind of grants, even if ARPA money is still available. The needs are going to structurally be there. Have we, through this centralized nonprofit program under OPM, is your office working to design a program that is sustainable and properly allocated in collaboration with the nonprofits and with our state funding to address those needs? Have we developed a plan, or is there an intention to develop one when the money does go off the cliff and dry up?
Well, I can tell you we're in constant contact with OPM, and we have a good relationship and let them know of what the needs are of our private nonprofit providers. So should we get to even near that point where our funds are depleted, it would be a conversation that we would continue to have. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I would hope that for those that may be listening and for us within the subcommittee to not have that money allocated in fiscal year 24-25 from the governor's budget is a point of concern to me, because the need continues to rise and goes unabated. So I thank you for your clarification, and I hope we'll continue having this conversation to be sure that our nonprofit partners are fully funded to address the need in the community. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Meskers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll go back to Senator Wong's question, because now I'm a little bit muddied on the answer. So among the ARPA dollars, about how much do you have that's been unallocated to date? Or what was the amount that was approved and how much has been drawn down? Was kind of the question there.
10 million in each year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll turn to my CFO.
Hi, good morning. I believe most of those dollars have been awarded to private nonprofits. We've been every 3 to 6 months been running a program to allow them to apply for additional dollars to keep that balance going out the door. Specifics on how much has been paid out, I don't have with me here, but we could certainly get that to you.
No, I was thinking more what is unallocated or what has not been claimed and what's the remaining balance that people can still apply for. That's my point of question. Do you know what that is, more or less?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information. I think we are maybe 5 million remaining out of the 20, but I can find out.
It's a ballpark is good enough. I just wanted to get an idea.
Yeah.
On that allocation versus now I'm hearing OPM 25 million a year for the next 2 years. what's the difference in terms of the qualifications on how that's allocated? Or is it just going into a different pocket? Is OPM going to oversee these same types of requests?
My understanding is that the ARPA dollars need to be tied back to COVID uses for, like the commissioner was saying, infection control, air filtration, those kinds of projects. You need to have that connection. I don't believe the OPM, those centralized funds have that kind of restriction on.
But it
them.
would address the same need, it would
could.
address the same needs plus more
Exactly.
because it doesn't have the restriction. So,
Correct.
but it shifts then the money to OPM in terms of you'll be handling the processing. OPM will get the money and through you, the awards will be made for that 25 million. Is that kind of the process?
So the application process might be slightly different. Instead of coming directly through us, it would go to OPM, but we work hand in hand with our providers to walk them through that process should they need assistance in doing that.
Okay. And even though I've been here now, going on 5 years, I'll profess, shouldn't do it in public, but I'll profess this ignorance. On the construction services, the group you're mentioning, is that a multi-agency construction so that they're working on coordinating any of the construction bids and processes for all of the agencies?
That is correct.
I guess except for the school program, which may be separate.
That is
right?
correct.
Okay. So presumably they're sitting and looking at the bid contracts. Is there a policy on consolidation in terms of the types of bids and the types of projects, or are all of them handled independently? Because I'm just wondering if we're getting the most efficient bids when we've got various types of HVAC running through multiple agencies. I'm wondering if we consolidate that, or if that's a question for OPM, or is that a question for the construction group?
Well, excuse me. I'm a little under the weather today, pardon me. Well, that's a good question for the Department of Construction Services, but we handle projects, we administer projects up to $500,000 in value. Anything over that, by state statute, the Department of Construction Services has to administer.
Okay, that's good enough. That sends me on my next next question somewhere else, but thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Veach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. I thank you all for what you do for the state. I mean, this is a very important department. I've got one quick question because I've had a constituent reach out to me recently. And I don't know if this is under your headline here or if it's a different department, autism and IDD. Do you do anything with those types of, because I consider that some mental health, of course. So, but that's not in your area.
No, that's not our department.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess that takes care of that because there is a tremendous waiting list there as well. And I was just curious as to any funding going, to help those people. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your question. Representative Farr.
Thank you to the chair. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And I just have kind of two questions I wanted to dig in on. I had seen in some of the bond requests, particular improvements, referencing environmental improvements. And I just wanted to kind of get a sense, have you all kind of looked across your facilities in general about and worked with DEEP on any number of improvements you could make for energy efficiency? And what is kind of the plan for you all moving forward to make many of those improvements? That would be helpful.
Yes, we have a sustainability officer, which is Ms. Aurora, and Steve can update you on some of the projects.
That would be great. Thank you.
Well, we are currently working on a large number of projects. We received about 5 or 6 years ago, $32 million from DEEP, which you're probably aware of. We have spent all but about 750,000 of that on energy related projects. All of our buildings, we've converted the lighting to LED. We've worked on, excuse me, many of the chillers that we've replaced that were outdated, boilers, things like that. Also looking at new windows, replacing single pane windows with double pane, so on.
So that $32 million investment covered a range of the initial kind of turnover into more efficiency
Yeah.
projects.
yes,
Is there
over
anything
many
on the
buildings.
waiting list still for you all, or that really covered the extent of what was needed?
Well, it's an ongoing process. Every time we replace a new roof, we will replace the insulation and add more to it to bring everything up to current codes. So every time we have a renovation that we do, where we have the opportunity to address that, we do.
So it's noted then in some of that $12 million of the unallocated, that some of those replacements would be referenced for you all in regards to some of these
Absolutely.
improvements. Okay, that's very helpful. And then just generally, I kind of had a question for you all. I know that DEMIS, like many of our other state agencies, are seeking workers and have any number of openings, especially for nurses. And we had heard last week from DECD and the Office of Workforce Strategy about some of their bonding requests to us about furthering the Career Connect program and some of the focus on workforce training. And I just wanted to hear from you all. Are you engaged with them in that effort? How can we make sure that that investment that we might make in Career Connect or DCD is really supportive of your needs?
So in general, the program, yes, I have someone right out of the Office of the Commissioner
Mhm.
who is all about workforce and connecting directly to sister state agencies for anything that we might benefit from, including career trajectories and bringing our LPNs to get the education for RN status. Some of the entry level job positions we might not be able to benefit from, but yes, we've been in conversation with all of our sister state agencies around those initiatives. Very important.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Because I want to make sure if we're making those investments that, you know, many of those folks are being directed, again, as you noted, to a lot of these openings that we have, including in DEMIS. So thank you for that. And thank you, the chair, for the time.
Thank you for your questions. Representative Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Just a quick follow-up on perhaps line of questioning from Senator Wong and Representative Meskers, just with respect to some of the nonprofits that have been awarded some of the bond funding over the years. If you could supply that list, if you haven't already, regarding some of the capital grants that have been awarded to those organizations in the past.
Sure.
But my question kind of centers on Whiting Forensic Facility. I know maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was legislation passed that separated Whiting Forensic Facility from the Connecticut Valley Hospital. And I do see that there is a request for funding to kind of help with some of that transition as that Whiting does look to expand and ensure that the programming there is and the facilities are appropriate for not just your staff, but also the patients as well. So can you speak to kind of how those you intend to utilize those dollars and why it is so important to move the facility from its current location to, I believe, the Connecticut Juvenile training school?
That actually is old information, so that is incorrect.
Okay.
So the money that we received will be to plan for and site another hospital that will replace Whiting. So again, it's not an expansion of beds. It's a replacement of a building that really has is outdated and needs many, many repairs. So we'll replace that building. The first step is to get folks with the expertise, both the engineering and forensic expertise, to design something that makes sense for this population and to site it on the property in Middletown. So on the same campus that the current hospital exists at, it would be to look at that campus, see where this can be sited, do things like soil testing and other things that would need to happen before any building would start.
And can you just speak to why it is so important to the operations and
Sure.
continuing to implement the recommendations and kind of changes as part of that initial legislation?
Sure. So for example, it's very, one concrete example is the way the current building is designed. You have to walk through one unit to get to the next unit. And obviously that is not the best design for staff or for clients. The treatment, what we call the treatment mall, is actually in the lower level of the building. So as you could imagine, not the appropriate light, not a lot of space to do vocational training, occupational, rehabilitative. It's a very small space and it's not very therapeutic in nature. So those are just two examples.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your question. To close us out is our co-chair, Senator Moore. Senator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner. This was really informative because I think a piece of it that was missing for me was the Department of Construction Services. And I'm questioning or asking, like, once we allocate the funds, how much control do you have to make sure that once the funds have been allocated, that the work is being done and on a time frame? And my other part of that question is, do you have a time frame then when you say we need to get started fixing something like the garage, how long it should take or what the expected end date is at? Because I think the frustration was for the people who are contacting me is that I kept saying, yes, we allocated the funds. First of all, it took a long time for us to get your funds. I do want to acknowledge that. And then after that, it was, well, how long is it going to take to get the garage up and repaired? So I think there's a breakdown that I didn't think about, just to tell you, to say that it would take 2 years, because I found out that it was December 2021 that we allocated those funds. So it was after maybe a whole year. I think it was a year that people were still calling me, asking me, when is this going to be done? So is there a time frame that you have control over, or that you expect something from the time the funds are allocated and you reach out to as the Department of Construction Services that something is done, and that they feed back to you a time frame to let you know if there's a backup or if there's a slowdown or if there's a problem, that it's getting done? And that's a lot in one, but I just want to know that there's some controls and follow through, that you know if there is a delay, that you know what it is. And I'm questioning 2021. I've heard a lot of people say the project has gone up in cost. I'm wondering, has that happened also?
I'll let Steve speak to the cost, but I would say that there is a time frame that needs to be calculated out of the RFP process. And I think this had to be bid. Is this the one that had to be bid twice, or was that the sprinklers?
This, the garage was bid twice.
Bid twice. So, Senator, that was unanticipated, that it had to be bid twice, and that did have to do with the cost of the project. For smaller projects under $500,000, we would have control over those. For the larger projects, we would just work in tandem with DAS to make sure that we're communicating back and forth on timelines, on RFPs, on getting those cost estimates back. But do you want to speak to cost?
Yes, well, with regard to the Bridgeport garage, we're anticipating right now substantial completion in September of 2024. And with regard to the projects that are DCS administered, the projects are, the time frame is determined by them and the contractor. The low bid contractor gives us an estimate of the time that it's going to take to do the project, and they work with DCS on that. We can cajole DCS a little bit, but we don't have control over that.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you very much for being here today. Your testimony and presentation was very informative, and we thank you for the work that you and your agency do. You help out thousands of people in our state every day, and the work you do is so important, and whatever we can do to help going forward, please reach out anytime. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate that, Representative. Thank you.
So we have finished a little bit early, and I believe the military department is outside. Ash, can you see if they're ready? And if not, that's okay. And if they are, they can come on in. Thank you.
No.
So I want to thank all the members of this committee for being so efficient with their informative and incisive questions. The military department is now here before us, a little ahead of schedule, which is a good thing. General Yvonne, thank you so much for being here. Take your time and get settled, and then feel free to begin at your leisure.
So good
Proceed.
morning. We're ready to go. Chairpersons, members of the General Obligation Subcommittee, and those online as well. Thank you. I'm Major General Fran Yvonne, the Adjutant General and Commissioner of the Connecticut Military Department. Today, I'm joined to my left. I have members of the senior staff with Mike Carriger, our CFO, and Matt Wilkinson, our Director of Facilities, Maintenance Operations. I've also have his equivalent, our Director up on the Air Guard side, Corey Nick, Eric Heineman, our Legislative Liaison, and the guy who keeps me on time, Major Rick Bryce, who's our Executive Officer. So I thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you today to discuss our department's bonding authorizations and allocations. I've already provided the committee a detailed written testimony and will highlight the major points for you now. But before I do that, I'd like to provide you with some brief information on the state of our military department. Your Connecticut National Guard recently closed a chapter on an unprecedented period of domestic support operations and overseas deployments. With the pandemic and the safe return of thousands of our soldiers and airmen behind us, it's now time for us to refocus on the challenges that face us. These challenges include a return to prioritizing training so that our members are prepared to respond to the next state emergency and emergencies and to deploy overseas. The training requires a concerted effort of the state and federal level to ensure the Connecticut National Guard has the facilities to accomplish our assigned missions. Like many other employers, we're not immune. The Connecticut National Guard is struggling to meet its annual recruiting and retention goals. There are multiple factors that contribute to this negative trend. However, our ability to provide our members with both high quality training and a high quality of life while serving is one consistent factor that helps drive recruiting and retention. It is only with the support of this committee and the State Bond Commission that we meet our continuous goal of providing our guardsmen with superior facilities from which to train, operate, and support our state in times of emergencies. I'm appreciative of this committee's continued support so that the Connecticut National Guard can continue to live up to its motto of always ready, always there. For more than 2 decades, Connecticut's military facility modernization and recapitalization program has remained a good news story. I'm pleased to report we continue to have one of the top facility programs in the nation. New construction for the Connecticut National Guard not only benefits our soldiers and airmen, but also the state by providing new physical infrastructure and hundreds of skilled trade jobs right here in Connecticut. The military department will execute about $45 million in federal construction over the next 2 fiscal years. Our ability to execute this level of federal funding hinges almost entirely on the ability of the state to provide required matching funds. The agency expects to receive approximately $8 million in state bonding over the next 2 fiscal years, which will amply meet the requirements that we have looking forward. During these next 2 years, the department will also substantially complete execution of approximately 9 existing bonds with a total unallocated balance of approximately $4 million. Most of these projects are either ongoing or awaiting federal funds, which are dispersed on a different calendar cycle than the state. In addition to the large multi-million-dollar projects, such as the construction of a new Army Readiness Center in Putnam and a composite aerospace maintenance facility at our Bradley Air National Guard base, the agency has a continuous focus on sustainable energy projects throughout the state. These include the design and installation of electric vehicle charging stations in an effort to meet the goals of the governor's executive order number 1. Your support for all these improvements ensures our guardsmen and women are trained, ready, and have the resources necessary to accomplish their mission. Thank you for your time and attention, and we, or a member, all of us, are ready to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, General. What kinds of projects have recent bond funds been used for, and how have they improved your department?
So honestly, the average age of our facility, we're proud to say, is down to about 38 years old. So the most recent dollars have gone towards facilities in our readiness centers in Putnam, and also our hangar up in AASF up in Windsor Locks.
And of those projects, are there any federal matching dollars?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The goal or the rule is it's usually a 90-10 or an 80-20 fed to state. So that 10 or 20% that we get the state is crucial for the matching dollars. And it's also crucial for our design. So if we can do our design up front for future programs or facility upgrades, it gets us ahead of the line. So that state matching bond is crucial to the success of our program.
That's great. Any further questions from members of the committee? Ranking Member Piscopo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, General. Appreciate it. You being here, everybody. I see that, we always look for in this subcommittee, if the agency has made a request, we check to see if the governor has recommended. And we always check the authorizations from the actual allocations. This it's been good to you, this subcommittee, and the governor has been, it looks like you're pretty well suited here with any kind of request you have made and that we've stepped up for you. If there's anywhere we're lacking, of course, we'd like to hear from you. But my question goes to, and I don't mean to be parochial, it goes to the Litchfield County unallocated balance of 2 million. Do you need that somewhere else in your department in the military? Or do you need, it would probably require a language change of this bonding subcommittee to spend that where it could be more effective. I see it was allocated some in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So is there something we could do with that unallocated, or could we, or would you mind if we removed it?
No, so that's a great question. The importance of building a readiness center in Litchfield County is that'll get us an armory, a physical presence in each of the 5 emergency management regions. It's a very good question and timely. So yes, to answer your question, we still do need the 2 million to look for property and eventually get federal funding for the armory or the readiness center, the construction of the readiness center. But we're also talking with OEM and DAS construction services on potentially reallocating the $2 million in the East Lyme area to just recently over the last 6 months, property adjacent to our Stones Ranch military reservation in East Lyme and Niantic area has come available. And we're looking to purchase that property so that we can avoid encroachment from larger developments that are not going to be happy on Saturday morning when our trucks come rolling in. So we are, yes, we need the money. We also are in the midst of some negotiation where we could potentially reallocate it in this fiscal year as well.
Thank you. That may need a language change, Mr. Chairman, but we'll check on that. Thank you
Okay,
very
sir.
much for your answers.
Thank you.
Any further questions from members of this committee? Representative Baumgartner.
I do have one, but she had her. It's going to be a few questions.
Proceed.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, General, for joining us early this morning and your team as well. I represent the southeastern corner. So I'm very proud to represent certainly TASM and specifically the Theater Aviation Sustain Maintenance Group. Just can you speak to the need to obviously leverage state funds for the plethora of federal funds that will be coming down the pike? And obviously, certainly you have a large footprint to support, and was curious as to how kind of those federal dollars can be leveraged with state funds, so we can make sure that we're taking care of the facilities in my neck of the woods, specifically Camp Net as well in Niantic, and then the two armories in Norwich and New London as well.
Absolutely. So that the aviation maintenance facility in Groton is a great example. So that one, number one, that's our largest employer. So we have a contract workforce that basically takes aircraft, rotary aircraft, both the Black Hawk and the Chinook, down to bare bones. They do everything from repainting to upgrading the avionics. So they have outgrown the facility. Unfortunately, the facility is in a flood zone. So our number one priority with the federal government year to year, our request is to build a new armory in that, somewhere in that vicinity, to accommodate, their growing demand. They represent, I believe we're up to, I think, 15 or 16 states with 17 different states that they actually do the maintenance of rotary aircraft, so helicopters. And so that it contributes not only to Connecticut's readiness, but all those other 16 states as well. And as you said, we have the concentration of our military presence is down in that area. So Camp Net, hopefully we're good stewards with the community, but we've used a lot of the matching funds to upgrade the facilities, to not only bring them up to code, but to bring our energy efficient projects further up in line too. And I guess Mac would probably explain a little better as well.
Thank you, sir. Currently, we're actually working on a solar study for the Camp Net facility, which will help us reach even further into the governor's executive number 1 order. We're also, as General Levon spoke, we're working with on the federal side to secure funding to do not only build an armory, but also to do some significant renovations and modernization to a couple of the other facilities at the TASM project. And as the general spoke, those state matching funds help us to put our designs forward, and then those projects become much more competitive on the federal side. So we are hoping that we will be getting up to approximately $6 million in federal funding to renovate the blast paint booth facility for the TASM, as well as we've used matching state funds and some of the state contracting mechanisms that we've done a significant amount of energy conservation upgrades to the HVAC and utility systems on the TASM property. As well as Norwich, some of the state matching funds will be used for, we're doing a solar panel installation next fiscal year for that. And that will be basically a net zero energy project for that site. So that will reduce our electrical use there. We're also used state matching funds, and we've installed electric vehicle charging stations for both the military government, as well as the state government fleets at Norwich and Camp Net and at the TASM facility. So these bond funds, even though they're a very small part of several of those facilities, they're really instrumental for us to be able to get the funds and keep those facilities running.
Thank you for that answer. And similarly, I also know Stone's Ranch over the years becoming an increasingly important role in the training as well. And just obviously, given in my backyard here in Groton, hosting not just Electric Boat, now the largest private employer, and so important to our national security, but also hosting the submarine base. We're, as our region and our communities, talking about how we accommodate that growth. Obviously, a lot more folks coming into our region, and certainly increasingly, just given geopolitical conditions, very important to our U.S. national security. And so case in point, now we're talking about, how we're going to get folks into Groton, whether it's, expanding Shoreline East and utilizing, potential train lines, but also understand the, National Guard does play an outside role in the security of our region, and making sure that and in terms of the protection of critical national security assets, that you are provided the resources you need to be able to do that. So can you speak to kind of as we're hearing from other committees about the need for housing, the need to to invest in expanding our transportation networks, but to also do so in a way that doesn't impede on your ability to protect many of our security assets in our state and specifically in our neck of the woods.
So Electric Boat is a great partner. They hire many of our members. So our citizens, soldiers and airmen, basically we have them. It's more than 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year at this point. But we have them basically part-time, and they are employed by Electric Boat. During the pandemic, Electric Boat did just an outstanding job treating our folks that were on orders and combating and who were on orders to work the pandemic. So housing, we support any and all initiatives. We've been to the sub base. The team has been to the sub base. We're great partners with both the Coast Guard Academy and the sub base. We've looked at some of their housing. We don't have permanent housing per se from a guard perspective, but we've garnered some lessons learned as it comes to solar and other energy efficient items. From a security standpoint, that one bridge in your area is pretty key. And after 9/11, we had a fairly large presence there when we were under a heightened security threat. And I don't see any changes coming to that. And the good news is we have both a staging base down in that area and many units that we'd be able to ramp up and house if needed.
Thank you again, General, and also thank you for your service. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for those good questions. Next, I'll go to our ranking member, Senator Wong. Senator, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, General, to you and your team here, and along with all those that serve and protect our state. And fortunately, we've not had the danger and risk in our state, but your men and women do more than that. You help with natural disasters. So I'm really grateful. We look at this bonding, and again, it goes back. It's about infrastructure, but sometimes we kind of take it for granted that you're there, your men and women who protect us, because we have a false sense of security. This is about readiness and training for your men and women. Can you tell me how many Connecticut residents are currently in the National Guard?
Yes, sir. So basically with the Army and the Air Force National Guard, along with our state militia, it's roughly 5,000 members, both men and women that, have raised their right hand to be part of something larger than themselves.
And it's amazing. 5,000 Connecticut residents that live and work amongst us who still commit to protecting and serving their country. We sometimes take it for granted that they are that many Connecticut residents who step up to protect our country. How many are now on active duty being called into service?
So right now, so again, after coming off of the pandemic, coming off of last December, when we had some fairly large numbers deployed, we're currently down, I think today we're at 84 members, so just below 100. We've got 2 aviation detachments that are currently training in Texas before they make their way overseas. And we have some other smaller units that are in the queue to deploy later on this year and into FY24.
Thank you. And I know it's one of the big events when men and women are sent off and men and women come back home. We always want to celebrate that, but we forget so many things that go on in the interim, the readiness and the training, which leads to me this question, and I need to ask of you, because it's kind of, I'm surprised by it. I mean, one of the bond requests is the acquisition for property and development of readiness centers in Litchfield County. It was authorized in fiscal year 17, but to date, no funds have been allocated since then. I don't see any allocated to this day. Can you explain, was there a reason why we haven't pursued it on a readiness? Is it just lost in the shuffle in regards to saying that it's not necessary? I'm surprised by it, to be honest with you. As I was reading it, that we've not allocated an approved readiness center for training and preparedness in the Litchfield County area.
So I'll let Matt Wilkinson do a deeper dive, but twofold. One is the procurement of property is key. We've gotten very lucky in the Putnam area where we had an old DMAS property that we were able to work with the state to procure. And that we also, when you're pursuing federal dollars, the procurement or when you have property that you also score higher on the ranking, that gets us closer to securing the federal dollars as well. So it hasn't gone dormant, but I'll let Matt explain further.
Yes, sir. So with the procurement of property in the Litchfield County, one, we have some very specific requirements in order to build a new readiness center. And based on those, between those criteria, as well as how the federal procurement of the Milcon dollars, that facility has not received high enough scoring yet that it has moved up onto the president's budget and to the FIDEP. So we are working with DAS property to identify potential properties as properties come available. We're contacted by them, and we do look at and review them. But until that Milcon project does actually make the FIDEP, we don't necessarily have to execute for a property that may not be ideal for our requirements. Also, as General Levon said, just having that ability to purchase that property once that project makes a list makes us very competitive versus receiving a project but not having the land or real estate to place that readiness center onto.
I appreciate that explanation. It also explains why the delay, because you're looking at multiple actors, federal as well as various agencies, and the cost of land acquisition in Lower Fairfield County, even up to Litchfield County, is cost prohibitive. So I appreciate that, and thank you for that clarity. Number two, the matching fund for the construction of a warehouse at Cap Hartel. What is the purpose of the warehouse? I know you talked about it being constructed during World War II and it's well past its useful lifespan, but what is the purpose of the warehouse and what's it being used for now into the future?
So that warehouse facility houses, it's our primary receiving and shipping point for all our federal property, and that comes in and out state, for everything from large construction vehicles down to small laptop computers. It's the staging area. The equipment comes in through federal procurement. It's processed by our federal property book office as well as our U.S. Property and Fiscal Office, and then it's sent out to the units from that point. It's also where all our older property comes through. It is demilitarized or surplus and sent out either through to other units that require that material, or it's sent out through the surplus side of the house through the GSA side. It also is a staging area for our medical supplies that we keep on hand, as well as the staff that work that center. That is a World War II. It's actually a temporary structure, is how it's listed. It was to be torn down at the end of World War II, however, it remains. It is an inefficient facility, extremely, both on the energy side as well as just the process side. And so these state dollars, it's a very small amount, but that's going to allow us to expedite the design for it as soon as we receive the federal funding for it, which will make that project move to build a new warehouse site for those facilities. If that answers your question, sir.
It does, and I thank you for your knowledge and insight. It's a critical staging area for us to be able to transact and get equipment and get materials and supplies in and out. And I'm amazed that temporary buildings remain after World War II. And so I can see the need, and I appreciate your explanation. But explain to me the funding. So you're looking for 250,000 out of totaling of $1,250,000. So do you need to have that 250 allocated in order to qualify for the 1 million? What's the process? Can we get the 1 million now and then finish it off with the 250? What's the process? Are we holding up the potential 1 million provided by the federal funds because we've not allocated the 250?
So in this case, this facility is actually 100% federally funded for construction wise. And it's about a $6 million project. This $250,000 provides the state fees and the small state or the small construction and design parts that are not covered under the federal allocation. So until we receive that $6 million piece or this project makes the FIDEP, we don't require those $250,000. So as soon as we get it, we will use those $250 to award the design up to a year prior to the federal fiscal year happening where that project is awarded for. And then we'll also use that to pay some of the fees that are not covered, that are required by the state, but not covered by the federal government.
So again, I appreciate your clarifying this process. We're waiting for the 6 million of federal allocation from the president's allocation or congressional allocation. Which body authorizes this? Is it legislative or executive branch?
It's the legislative, sir. It's part of the 5-year MILCON budget. And then it also is based on national priorities. So even though it's a high priority for us, there might be another national priority out there that's higher. And that's why it delays necessarily the funding on it. But it's part of the 5-year MILCON cycle.
And that's a key point because we compete with the other 54 or 53 state National Guards as well as far as projects. So every year an annual submission is our Connecticut priorities, and then they're scored nationally across the 54.
Thank you, General. And I guess never to presume anything, I'm sure that you're in constant connection and communications with our federal delegation to ensure that that does meet the criteria, that we are in the running for that under the 5-year program. Just double checking.
They've been great partners. We talked with Congressman Courtney last week, and we have some submissions that we submitted to Senator Murphy as well for some shovel-ready projects if some money floats, becomes available anytime soon. Thanks.
Thank you. And is there anything that we can do on the state legislative side of the equation to be able to help you and your mission in that?
No, we appreciate the support. I mean, our ability to use state money for design build, again, gets us, in many cases, gets us in the queue. And when the success of our program going back 10 to 15 years would be if we have projects ready and other states cannot execute, we go in for a grab and we pull a project forward with the help of the same congressional delegation that you alluded to. So it's been very beneficial from a state perspective, and we're very happy that we have a good relationship and that you're supportive of Connecticut's home team.
Thank you, General. And I want to thank the chair for the indulgence of the time, but let me leave by saying thank you to your men and women for your protection and advocacy on behalf of the state and in this country. We owe you a great deal of thanks. Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Meskers, then Representative Veach.
Thank you, General. And thank you for your service. They say that to me sometimes, and I just think in retrospect or in view, the service you people provide is beyond the call. And I want to thank you for that. I guess the first question is more an intellectual. You referred to 53 or 54 National Guards, assuming that's states and territories, essentially, right? Okay. Because when I finished school, there were still only 50 states. I figured you were talking about Guam and the different territories, etc. It would help us, I think. I had 2 questions. The first question, I think you've answered, which is essentially you know, and you're in the queue at the federal level. And I was going to ask, and I'm not sure you've kind of answered already, if there's money coming through the infrastructure bills or other parts of the equation, will those be designated as well for your outfit, or the queues you're following now and looking for federal reimbursement are comprehensive? In other words, under these new programs, you expect you'll get opportunities.
Absolutely. I would say that, and Matt could correct me if I'm wrong, they would be additional opportunities. So we have at least 3 or 4 different types of funding streams. There's SRM, which is Sustainment Readiness, and UCCM, which is the acronym stands for, but it's a different fund of money that we can definitely provide, especially with dollars that, again, working with even with Congresswoman DeLauro's office from an appropriations perspective, that would help us get after the overall picture, our master plan, we call it, from both the Army and Air Guard side, that would most likely be in addition to the multi-military construction, high dollar value projects. Hopefully that answers the question.
It does. And lastly, what would I think be very beneficial to us in future meetings is on the punch list of projects you're looking to do based on you've got a food chain or chain of command, you're reading into Washington on the inclinations on what they'll fund. If you give us the list of things that you think would have a higher priority on a shovel-ready basis, that you need state starter money, seed money, planning for those shovel-ready projects, probably get that priority list to us in terms of where you think it would help if we needed to accelerate some of the seed capital to secure. Because, you know, I'll be defensive of our federal delegation. We live in a pretty well-to-do state, and the complaint is we send a lot of money to Washington, we always don't get it back. But it's important to know if we don't have the shovel-ready funding, if we haven't provided you with the right planning, they can't get the earmarks, the allocations back from the federal government.
Absolutely.
So that priority list would be very helpful going forward. Like,
Yeah, no, sir, that's a great point. We, every year, I'm looking for our update. This will do the high dollar value Milcom project. So per statute, we provide this to all of you, the legislature, on an annual basis. But
the ones that are
from an
outstanding,
our earmarks perspective, great point, and we can definitely provide that. Absolutely.
and from an earmark in terms of like what we have funded, what we haven't funded. So we start looking and try to help you
Absolutely.
with like pushing forward on the ones that are going to have the best chance of reimbursement.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good questions. Representative Veach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I guess we're still morning. Good morning, and thank you, General, and all your sidekicks there coming before us. And thank you all for your service. Quick question. I think the senator had asked, you have about 5,000 members in your
Yes, ma'am.
service
So,
there? Okay.
so basically 3,600 Army National Guard members and 11 to 1,200 on the Air National Guard side. That's
So-
our authorized, what they call end strength.
Okay, so let me ask you another question if I can. In terms of recruitment and retention, because I know that's very important these days, and I know it's a huge issue with our state police, our local police. You are a policing unit, if you will, you know, and I'm just wondering, how are you doing? Your numbers, are they where they've been for the past few years, higher, lower? And how do you reach out to recruit? Do you have campaigns? You know, where do you get the funds to do that? Because that's a huge nut, I think.
Absolutely. So in 20 and 21, we actually did fairly well from a recruiting perspective.
Mhm.
We were the #1 small state throughout the nation on the Army National Guard side.
Right.
22, we're having some in 22 and 20, and this year we're having some challenges. We're at about 47% as we sit here today of our mission. But so it's a great question, because the reality, so yes, we do have a campaign. We have multiple campaigns. When we talked to the Appropriations Committee last week, we're very happy that in this year's budget submission, we have some money dedicated to help us get after a state recruiting campaign. The reality is that 1 in 4 youth of America, and Connecticut's pretty much the same, but 1 in 4 actually qualify to serve in any uniform. And when we talk about the propensity to serve coming out of COVID, that number went down from maybe the low 20% to down to less than 9%. So we're all competing for that same group of individuals. We're happy that our recruiter, I have over 40 recruiters that are out there every day working it. Every member, all 5,000 know that they're recruiters. We have a 29% market share over the other services. We've got, like I said, hopefully with the passing of the budget this year, we'll have some money that gets after some incentives that we're trying to initiate. It could be a stipend for an individual member or retiree who gets a lead into the unit. We have a STEM trailer that we're getting out to the high schools that has a 3D printer and a bunch of aerodynamic stuff, that, different pieces and equipment that we bring to high schools to make sure that everyone knows about the opportunity of the National Guard. The tuition waiver, which is a benefit that goes back to the late 80s from the General Assembly, And we have access to our members, low cost for TRICARE. So we want to make sure, I mean, the goal for us is that, you know, every 18 to 24-year-olds, and we understand that service is not for everyone, but they understand that there's an opportunity that they have to get not only higher education and healthcare, but also access to leadership. And many employers like Electric Boat respect that and hire them on the back end of their military training as well.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. I'm glad to hear that we at least targeting this. I'd love to hear next year that you're way above that 40.
It's our number one priority.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
recruiting and retention, we talk about equaling readiness, because that empty chair, that empty seat in a military vehicle, the effective readiness is zero. So we work, and that also is indicative of our federal dollars that come into state. So if we cannot make our end strength mission, then they will come after not only our full-time manning, but our force structure and some military equipment that we use to respond to any and all natural disasters. So it's something that we take very seriously. Great
Thank
question.
you again for your service and thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your questions. Representative Farrar, you have the floor.
Thank you, the chair. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. We're grateful for you being here and grateful for you spending the time to share all of your background and thoughtful service with us. I do have a follow-up question. I think I'd seen in the narrative that it was noted kind of the investments that you all have pursued in reference to the energy efficiency and sustainability of some of the physical resources that you all have. I appreciated the current lengthy list that you all have of statewide facilities. I have one in my district, in the 20th district in West Hartford, the Armed Forces Reserve Centers. I noted in the narrative that there had been kind of a $3 million execution of some projects, but that there was federal dollars that would ramp that up to 6 million. Are there further kind of energy efficiency projects that you all have in the pipeline? Because in the kind of program description for this year, I didn't see any, and I just wanted to kind of know where that kind of scope of work is headed for you all with all your facilities. Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. So yes, we have, we're actually doing a study right now for solar energy that will go on CampNet. That'll be a federally funded project. It is not on the list yet because it's not fleshed out. We don't know how much that one will be. We are also looking at microgrid project up in Camp Hartel and Windsor Locks, where our aviation facility is. Those projects will be a few years out. We're actually received word recently that in FY24, we will receive a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will come in and do a design study for that for future funding years, probably in the 28-29 fiscal year timeframe. That will be a combination of use of our generators, potentially something like a fuel cell, as well as renewable facilities on that side. Now, we're also looking at some of the solar canopy charging stations for some of our parking areas. Our first piece is to get those vehicle charging stations for both our federal government as well as our state government fleets, and then we'll start working out for the privately owned vehicles that will be addressed on that side. Something that's not necessarily noted is every one of our HVAC or air handling energy upgrades always have very high energy efficiency standards that are put into place, as well as we have been growing our building control systems, which help us regulate and keep those utility costs down. Those are probably one of our largest pieces of our operating budget. So we are very concerned, not only just on the sustainability and environmental side, but just on the operating side to keep those operating costs down as best we can in a fiscally responsible environment. So those are just a few of them. We're always pushing for solar studies. One of the or solar panel usage. One of the problems we've run into is until recently, those panels weren't efficient enough to meet some of our demands. They're actually there now. So as well as some of the construction costs have greatly reduced, and some of the changes in the federal contracting that allow us to do some private partnerships with some companies to manage those facilities. They've actually opened up. So in the out years, we will be adding even more of those types of systems.
Thank you for that. So given kind of where you all are headed, it sounds like there might be further moments that you all would kind of come forward for state bonding funds, but several of these projects that you noted have some federal dollars. Is that accurate associated with them?
That's correct, ma'am. And some of the current bond funds are being used for those projects, as well as those 24-25 submissions. Parts of those funds are for some of these projects also.
Okay, so it's embedded in some of these.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you so much for describing that. And in reference to the vehicle fleets you had mentioned, I know I had noted there was reference of the charging stations, but is there also a transition with some of the vehicles?
Excuse me, ma'am. The Army climate strategy. Sorry, I messed up the name on that
It's
one.
all good.
But
all
it's
good.
so by 2030, the military is looking to convert their light tactical fleet to electric vehicles or hybrid type vehicles, as well as we're currently in the process. It's called our GSA fleet, which is our federal sedans, pickups, things like that, as well as the state vehicles that we use to maintain our facilities. As those vehicle fleets transition over, that's what these charging stations will serve. Once that tactical vehicle fleet converts, because we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, additional charging stations for those vehicles will be placed into our motor pools. Those will most likely be 100% federally funded because they're supporting the federal mission. The state portions will be used for more of those, the GSA fleet, the state vehicle fleets, as well as when we start to implement in some of the POV parking fleets.
So would you have the same goal for the state fleet to meet that 2030 goal? Is that what you all are pointing towards?
We're actually hoping to meet that goal much sooner than that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for those updates. It's very helpful. And again, thanks for being here with us. Thank you, the chair.
Thank you for your good questions. General, we thank you very much for being here today with your team. And on behalf of this entire subcommittee, we thank you and your department and the men and women of the National Guard for always being there to protect and help the people of Connecticut. During the pandemic, all of you really stepped up and really helped our state. And we're so grateful for your service. And again, for the entire National Guard. Thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you, sir. We appreciate the support of the entire committee and legislature. Thank you.
Okay, so we are still running a little bit ahead of schedule, so I thank you all very much for that. It looks like the Office of Chief Medical Examiner is joining us online, Bree. Okay, great. So you are all more than welcome to introduce yourselves to our committee and certainly begin your presentation.
Good morning. I'm Jim Gill. I'm the Chief Medical Examiner, and with me is Dr. Maura DeJoseph, the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner, and Dwayne Gordon, our head administrative person. So we're here to talk about. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. We're here to talk about bond funding for the design of alteration, renovation, and additions to the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, which is located on the Yukon Health Center in Farmington. Our office was originally built over 35 years ago, and at that point, we were doing about 1,300 autopsies a year. We're now performing over double that number of autopsies per year, and so we have a problem with work areas for autopsies as well as storage spaces for bodies. We actually have 3 refrigerated tractor trailers in our driveway to store remains. So we've started this project in 2020, and we've been working with DAS Construction Services to start first the feasibility study and then work on this expansion. Currently, they've retained architectural services, and we are moving along in that phase at this point.
Okay, thanks. I take it we'll go right into questions if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me.
So are there any federal funds available for some of the improvements that you're seeking?
There's some very limited funding for potentially some equipment, but far as construction, none that I'm aware of.
And then Dr. Gill, is the agency's accreditation in any kind of jeopardy if significant improvements are not made based upon some of your requests?
Yes, actually, our accreditation has already been downgraded to provisional status purely because of our facility issues, because of the lack of autopsy space, the lack of storage space, office space. We're kind of managing to keep up with the autopsies and the turnaround times. But the facility is a major problem. And they've downgraded us potentially if we don't get this on track and get an increased size for our facility, we may lose complete accreditation.
Understood. Senator Moore, our co-chair, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioner and your staff. So, you went through a tough time with COVID. I understand it was a challenge for all of us, and it illuminated a lot of our shortcomings on how we're able to deal in a crisis. So you're not by yourself, and it's not unnoticed that we're not prepared, and I don't think anybody was. So I don't want that to be the focus of this, but the downgrading is of some concern. I have received calls from medical examiners or morticians about the downgrading, wondering how does that impact us as a state. And so my question to you would be, I know about the autopsies I'm going to ask, are they still far behind in the autopsies, but also for the lack of space, what is the overall plan to be able to have space in place, and how long will it take? And what is your plan to move us out of this place of being downgraded and from provisional to whatever it is, the next step up?
Yeah, so we really need kind of an assessment of of the land around us to see what options are for an expansion, because we are a 24/7 agency, and so we have to continue maintaining our work during any time of renovation. So it would be I think, a very tricky process to coordinate all that, and hopefully, it can be done. Otherwise, we'd be looking maybe, I guess, at a new building. But the funeral directors, you're right, they are a very important constituent of us. And what the problem that happens with them because of our size issue is that it takes more time for us to release a body, for example. We have to have them make sure they call us ahead of time, and that can help kind of move things along. But sometimes the body is out in a cooler on the parking lot, and so we have to get someone to go out there, remove it, and so forth. And so that's a delay. We have been able to keep up on our autopsies. So generally, if a body gets to our office by 9 a.m, we do the autopsy that same day. And so that really helps, I think, the funeral homes get the bodies, because they have families and they have arrangements that need to be taken care of. You may have seen around the country, there's been some offices where they've been weeks behind in actually getting to an autopsy. So we are been managing that, but we could be much more efficient, I think, with an increased space, and we can increase our efficiency for the funeral directors as well.
So what is the plan for additional space? And I mean, we don't want to sit here in another year and hear that there's still not space and there's no planning for it. Is planning taking place right now for additional space, and what is it?
So the first step was to retain this architect, and we have a local architect, but they also are working with a national architect who is kind of one of the key experts in the country on morgue construction and autopsy facility construction. They've done autopsy offices, medical examiner offices around the country. So we need them to come in, look at our numbers, look at our population, look where we're going, and look at the layout, the physical plant of our facility, and what potential options there are to expand or not, and have them give us a professional assessment. How many bodies do we need to be able to store? Right now, we can store about 85 bodies. I think we really need to probably store about 200 bodies. Right now, we have 4 autopsy tables. We probably need about 12 or 16 autopsy tables. As a comparison, New Mexico, which is a statewide system, they cover the entire state like Connecticut does. Their population is about 2 million people. They do about 2,000 autopsies. We do about 3,200 autopsies. They have a relatively new facility with 16 autopsy tables, a state-of-the-art facility. Connecticut is way behind the ball on that. And it's kind of embarrassing to me, frankly. I do a lot of work with national organizations in forensic pathology. In Connecticut, really, the facility is again, we need to get on this.
So I'm gonna go back to, what's the plan? I mean, where are we in the plan for the future? And I think I've watched too many CSIs because and Law and Order, because I'm seeing these facilities high tech with all these things that people are able to come in and do that. And I think that builds the expectations of that's what we have in Connecticut, right? But I don't think that's what we have in Connecticut. So I still don't hear, like, where are we in that plan of making sure we get to that end goal of having a place that is meeting the needs of Connecticut.
I mean, that's ultimately up to DAS Construction. I mean, we are relying on them as our professional agents to move this process along. And it's been 2 years since we've engaged them. Obviously, we had COVID there, but we need to get them moving. Yeah, they've hired the architect now. Now we need to get that rolling and get that architect in here and do an assessment and see what's actually feasible. I mean, right now we're kind of just treading water, but yeah, I can't do it myself. I mean, we have DAS Construction to do this for us. We invited them to come here with us and they declined. So we're here to try and answer the questions the best we can.
I appreciate that, and I think we'll be poking the bear on this one. It's the second time we've heard this come up in conversations about the construction and the delay. But I heard you say there's only so much you can do, but you have us also as your arms and legs that we can help push those issues. And you need to let your legislators know when you're having those kind of problems so we can kind of push those things forward for you. Because when I think about people and the passing of people and the dignity that they deserve it. And we have to give that to them as legislators and as members of this community responsible with that task. And we want to make sure that you have what you need and that we're living up to our expectations of what we can do for you. So I want you to let you know, I personally will pursue this and try and move this along, because I don't want to sit here a year later and know that we're still having a discussion about what it shoulda, coulda, and there's not a plan on the table. So I just want to thank you for the work that you do. I know it's not easy, and when you're working with less than what you need, but it's our job to make sure you have what you need. And that's why we're here on bonding, that if we can't give you money if you don't have a project, right? Or you don't know what it's going to cost. But we want to be here that when you're shovel ready and you know what you want to do, that we're here to support that. But if we need to push that, that's what we can do. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Moore. Representative Piscopo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have to follow up on our Senate Chair's line of questioning on this. Last term, this was a huge push for us. It was a big priority for us. I know the ranking members, the chairman of this subcommittee, Senator Moore and Representative Boer, and the ranking members of the whole leadership of the full revenue and bonding committee were on board with getting you help on this. And we stepped up. We allocated 2.5 million right away to get you going on this study. And it seems that you have completed it. You've got the architect done. And thank you for your testimony. It's really easy to read. You've got the construction fee, the DAS fee, artwork, studies. You have everything ready to roll. I don't understand this hesitancy on, I don't understand. The governor stepped up, we stepped up, $21 million. So can you just give it to me like in a sentence or two, one more sentence or two on this, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously COVID was part of the role. DAS Construction also lost our project manager at one point, so they had to get a new project manager on board. But we went through the whole process. We've hired the architect. Apparently, they're working on the contract with the architect. And then I'm hoping once that contract is completed, that the architect will come in and start speaking to us and looking at our facility and looking at our numbers and really get a good feasibility of what the options are for us for the next steps. I mean, we really need to know, are we able to physically expand and keep our office functioning at the same time? Is that even possible? That's really a basic question. And we need their expertise to look at that, to look at zoning and push back their wetlands around our office. Is it, technically feasible to expand here? And if not, then we have to kind of look at a new building. But yeah, it's been 2 years now. We've been waiting for this assessment.
So we spent 1.3 million on an architect, and we're not even sure if we're gonna expand there or try and look for another place, or if it even fits. What did the architect do for 1.3 million?
Now, right now, they've just selected the architect and they're working on the contract for the architect. The architect has done nothing yet.
We have that current activity on your testimony, 1.3 million you spent on this.
There was an initial, I believe, a preliminary architect that came in a couple of years ago just to give an overview, I think, to get the process started. But the architect that's been retained by DAS Construction Services, they're still working on the contract with them. They told me this a week or so ago.
Wow, I'm confused. We'll have to talk maybe in the near future, maybe offline, we'll talk about this. I remain confused on this, where we are. Just a real specific question. You've asked for 21 million. The governor's recommended 21 million in this fiscal year coming. And it looks like your construction costs are already at 23 million. Are you going to be coming before us for another couple million, or is that, do you want to up your request this year, or is there something you have an ask of this bonding subcommittee?
Yeah, I have no idea, frankly. I mean, that's something that DAS Construction should be assessing with the architect once they get the architect on board to look at the project. I can't give you, I think it'd be inappropriate for me, to throw out a number there. I rely on their expertise to do this for us.
Well, thank you for your answers, and we're here to help you. I mean, we want to.
I appreciate
that. Let us know if you keep us posted, I guess is how we're going to leave this. I'm still confused, and we'll work on it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Meskers.
Thank you very much. Look, I appreciate the testimony. I think, in the world we live in today, I think Senator Moore and Representative Piscopo, I think the commentary resonates. The idea that we have deceased members of the community in refrigerated cars is unacceptable. I guess what I'm hearing from you as a coroner, that the 21.5 ultimately is a preliminary estimate and a placeholder, because we don't have the final location and or architectural plans for where we think capacity has to be and whether this site will host that capacity, because you need a larger facility. And that's the neat and easy summary, right?
Yeah, I think you've got it exactly right. Yes. Yeah. We just don't know how we can expand in our current footprint, to expand into what we need, more space, and at the same time, keep our agency functioning. Again, we can't close down for a day.
Yeah. And not to date myself, Dr. Quincy did not go to architectural school. You're the coroner. So I don't expect you to be able to answer those questions. I'm not happy in the situation we're in. I'm not directing that frustration at you. So I think people at the end of life and people who are seeking an autopsy and questions for their loved ones deserve ultimately the level of respect and dignity that we need to provide in the facility. And we need to provide you with a workspace where you can successfully execute your duties as coroner. So I think you're hearing from all of us, it's the same message, which is we probably are a little frustrated because we're trying to figure out exactly where you are, and we're figuring out where we have to direct our frustration to make it happen. And we know it's not with you and your group. So I think we're probably going to have further conversations with DIS. We're going to have further conversations with the executive. Certainly, I think I can't imagine that the group is not disposed to support the 21.5, but I think the message should be that that's a placeholder without a proper assessment of property values and the capacity of the facility that ultimately has to be looked at, designed, and agreed to. So we should expect that the number will vary from there, and that may be just a baseline projection.
I think that's a very fair assessment. Thank you. Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Representative Farrar, you have the floor.
Thank you, the chair. Thank you all for joining us. And I just have one follow-up question, and I understand, again, that there's only, so much, kind of control you all have of what the next steps are with this project. And you've already heard from my colleagues how much we want to make sure that we're putting forward a united effort to support this. But I know you all mentioned that DAS is drafting a contract with this selected architect. Have you been given any information about when that contract will be completed and when the architect will be able to start their work?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful, again, for our consideration of us needing to follow up further with DAS. And again, thank you all for your expertise. You really painted a picture, as you said, especially with the New Mexico example, about how far afield we are here in Connecticut of supporting your needs. So thank you again, and we look forward to working with you on this. Thank you. Thank you, the chair.
Thank you for those good questions. And I'll just reiterate, actually, before I close, Senator Moore has one more question. Senator, you have the floor.
Oh, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, I think I had this in my talk and some of my comments to into what is the next ranking?
Senator, can you repeat what you just said? I believe you froze.
Okay. I asked, so we're in a provisional state right now. What will it take for us to get to a place where, I don't know what it's called, the next step, to bring us back to being compliance?
So to gain full accreditation, we would have to have adequate storage space, in the facility for bodies, adequate number of autopsy spaces, adequate number of workspaces, and so forth. So essentially the new facility would bring us to full accreditation. Sometimes they'll give you provisional accreditation for a year or two, but that's not, that they may eventually just say, nope, we've given you a chance now, you're going to lose all accreditation and you're no longer accredited nationally.
And how long have you been provisional?
It's been about a year now.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And again, thank you all very much for being here. We certainly feel your frustration. DAS is actually coming in today, so I'm sure these conversations will certainly come up. But if there's anything else that we can do to really help you all through this process, feel free to reach out anytime. And we thank you for doing the best that you can with the limited resources that you have. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, still running ahead of schedule. The Department of Motor Vehicles are next. I don't believe they are here as of yet. So we will take a short break and reconvene in about 15 minutes. Thank you.